He built a channel most people said would never work by giving away his services for free. No sponsorships, no brand deals, just a guy with a mower, a GoPro, and a mission that made zero financial sense on paper. Kevin Hansen, better known online as Lawn Care Juggernaut, clawed his way out of near eviction with his last $100 and turned a beat-up chainsaw into a full-blown media empire. He's helped families in 15 states, racked up tens of millions of views, and built a following that most creators twice his size would envy. But behind the satisfying transformations and the feel-good moments, there's a story most of his subscribers have never fully heard. One that includes a dark afternoon in Tulsa that shook him to his core and nearly stopped the channel dead in its tracks. This is what really happened to Lawn Care Juggernaut. Before there were millions of views and heartwarming transformations, there was a young man in a city he barely knew, running out of options fast. Kevin Hansen had just gotten married and relocated, and almost immediately the walls started closing in. Money was tight, bills were piling up, and with a baby on the way, the pressure wasn't just financial. It was the kind of weight that makes people question every decision they've ever made. He wasn't just broke. He was staring down an eviction notice, trying to figure out how to provide for a family that was about to get bigger. Most people in that situation either ask for help or give up. Kevin did neither. When an ice storm tore through the area that winter, it didn't feel like an opportunity. It felt like one more thing going wrong. But Kevin made a phone call to his dad, and something his father said clicked. Growing up, the family had made money cutting storm-damaged limbs. It was hard, unglamorous work, but it paid. So Kevin scraped together everything he had, literally his last $100, and bought a chainsaw. He went door to door, cutting fallen limbs and dragging debris to the curb for city pickup. He worked days, he worked nights. He didn't have a truck full of equipment or a team behind him, just that chainsaw, his own two hands, and the kind of desperation that makes you sharper than you'd ever be otherwise. Slowly, the ice storm work started bringing in just enough to keep the lights on. But as that work dried up, Kevin started noticing something. Everywhere he drove around Tulsa, he kept seeing lawn care guys, trucks, trailers, mowers, guys who seemed to have figured out something he hadn't yet. He started doing the math in his head. He started paying attention. And somewhere in those long drives between jobs, the idea that would change his life began to take shape. He knew nothing about running a lawn care business. He had next to no equipment, but he'd already proven he could outwork the situation he was in. And that counted for more than most people realize. The grind was just getting started. Kevin didn't walk into a lawn care business with a mentor or a blueprint. He did what anyone with no money and a lot of questions does. He went to YouTube. Channels like Greg Chiselem's Geek to Freak Lawn Care became his classroom. Here was a guy building a business from scratch. Just a truck, a push mower, and a blower, talking openly about what worked and what didn't. For Kevin, watching that was like someone handing him the cheat code. He absorbed everything he could find: how to advertise, how to price jobs, how to land clients when you have nothing to show for yourself yet. He started with a used push mower, some hand tools, and a beat-up weed eater. Not exactly an impressive operation, but he pushed forward anyway. When it came time to start his own channel, Kevin wanted to do for others what Greg had done for him. He wanted to be the guy in the trenches sharing real information with people who were just starting out or grinding through the hard early years of running a lawn care business. He called it Lawn Care Juggernaut, and the name wasn't chosen randomly. Juggernaut wasn't about the business, it was about the mindset. The idea was that anyone watching could internalize it. You are unstoppable. Failure is not an option. You keep moving regardless of what's in front of you. Kevin has said he never expected to become the Juggernaut himself. The name was always meant to be something the viewer could claim. The fact that it became his identity ended up being a happy accident. What wasn't so happy was the early reality of the channel. For years, not months, years, the subscriber count barely moved. He was sitting around 100 subscribers for a long stretch, grinding out content that almost nobody was watching. By his own admission, those early videos were cringeworthy. The production was raw, the format was still taking shape, and the audience simply wasn't there yet. Most people would have quietly shut it down and moved on. Kevin kept filming, he kept posting, and slowly, almost invisibly, the foundation of something much bigger was being laid, even if he couldn't see it yet. The pivot that changed everything didn't come from a strategy session or a light bulb moment over a spreadsheet. It came from a drive through the neighborhood with his brother riding shotgun. Kevin spotted a property with grass so tall and wild it looked like it hadn't been touched in months. Nobody knew the story behind it, who lived there, what had happened, why it had been left like that. But Kevin looked at it and felt something. He'd spent the early years of his channel filming nice, clean, paying jobs, respectable work, but that overgrown lawn was a different kind of video. It was the kind of transformation that would actually stop someone mid-scroll. He turned to his brother and floated the idea, what if they just cut it, for free? His brother shut it down almost immediately. They weren't getting paid for that job. The equipment was hard-earned, and Kevin wasn't exactly making a YouTube income yet. The math didn't add up. It was a reasonable objection, and Kevin heard it, drove past the property, and didn't stop thinking about it. It was his dad who eventually came along for that first free mow. No cameras rolling for a big debut, no grand announcement to the channel, just Kevin and his father showing up to a stranger's overgrown property and getting to work. Something about it felt right in a way that was hard to explain. Kevin had lived through his own version of hard times. He knew what it felt like when life piles up and the small things, like a lawn, become impossible to keep up with. That overgrown yard wasn't laziness, it was a symptom of something, and cleaning it up felt like more than just cutting grass. What started as one job with no paycheck quietly became the entire identity of the channel. Kevin began seeking out properties where something had clearly gone sideways, elderly homeowners, people dealing with illness, families that had simply fallen behind. He wasn't charging a cent, and the more he did it, the more the audience started to find him. The concept was simple, the execution was genuine, and viewers, it turned out, could tell the difference between someone doing good for the camera and someone who actually meant it. The number one question Kevin gets, and has always gotten, is some version of the same thing. What's the catch? Because on the surface, none of it makes sense. A professional lawn care operator shows up unannounced, spends hours transforming a property that in some cases would cost thousands of dollars to restore, hands the homeowner a business card that says $0 owed, and drives away. People watching from the outside assumed there had to be a hidden angle. Some thought it was a publicity stunt. Others were convinced it was a scam of some kind, that the homeowners were plants, that something was being sold, that nobody just does this. Kevin has addressed it more than once, and the answer is genuinely straightforward. The channel runs entirely on ad revenue. Every view generates income. Every subscriber who keeps coming back is essentially funding the next free job. The more outrageous the transformation, the more people watch, and the more watches mean more money to cover equipment costs, fuel, travel, and everything else that goes into showing up and doing the work for free. It's a loop that only functions if the content is compelling enough to keep people clicking, which means the worse the yard looks going in, the better the business model works. What makes it unusual isn't just the generosity. It's the discipline. Kevin has consistently walked away from money that most creators in his position would have taken without a second thought. No affiliate links, no sponsored segments, no brand integrations buried in the middle of a video. At a channel his size, that kind of monetization could realistically double his income. He's left that on the table repeatedly and deliberately because the moment the channel starts feeling like a commercial, the trust that makes the whole thing work starts to erode. For the people on the receiving end, that trust is everything. Many of the homeowners Kevin has helped have said they didn't believe it was real until he actually showed up. Some turned him away the first time. Others stood in their doorways and cried watching their yards come back to life. The reaction is never about the grass. It's about someone showing up when nobody else did and not asking for anything in return. That kind of content doesn't need a sales pitch. Somewhere along the way, Kevin made a joke that accidentally became a second career, the boring channel. The name alone tells you everything about how seriously it was meant to be taken. Started as a spin-off with the most stripped-down concept imaginable. No commentary, no voiceover, no tips for lawn care business owners, just raw, unedited footage of Kevin working. Mower sounds, trimmer sounds, the satisfying visual of tall grass getting cut down to a clean, even surface. That was the entire pitch. He even leaned into the self-awareness of it. The profile picture is a piece of fan art, the name is a punchline, and the whole thing was built on the assumption that nobody would take it seriously. The audience had other ideas. It turns out there is an enormous appetite for exactly this kind of content. No talking heads, no music bed, no narrative arc, just the meditative rhythm of a job being done well, from start to finish. Viewers started using it as background noise while they worked. Others watched it to decompress after long days. Some people described it as genuinely calming in a way that polished, high-production content simply isn't. The raw equipment sounds, the slow transformation of a neglected yard into something clean and cared for. It connected with people on a level that is genuinely difficult to manufacture because it wasn't manufactured at all. What the boring channel revealed was something important about why the whole operation works. Kevin's audience isn't just watching for the transformation. They're watching because the whole thing feels unfiltered and real. The boring channel strips away even the voiceover layer and leaves nothing but the work itself, and millions of people showed up for it anyway. Combined with the main channel, the two built a subscriber base approaching 7 figures with tens of millions of views stacked across both. It also reinforced something Kevin had understood instinctively from the beginning. In a space saturated with creators chasing trends, optimizing thumbnails, and engineering virality, he'd built something that worked precisely because he wasn't doing any of that. The joke channel became proof of concept. Authenticity, it turned out, had its own algorithm, but the moment that truly put Lawn Care Juggernaut on the map had nothing to do with grass, and it almost never got posted at all. It was a job that looked like every other job on the surface. October 2021, a foreclosed property with an overgrown lawn in Tulsa, exactly the kind of place Kevin had been seeking out for years. Nobody answered the door, which wasn't unusual for a vacant property. He got to work. The mower was running. The footage was rolling. And from the outside, it looked like another transformation in the making. Then something stopped him. It's hard to describe in a way that doesn't feel gratuitous, but Kevin has talked about it openly. There was a smell. There were flies, the kind of details that don't add up to anything good and that no amount of experience in lawn care prepares you for. Kevin called the police. Officers arrived, entered the property, and confirmed what he already suspected. Someone had passed away inside that home, alone, undiscovered, in a house with an overgrown lawn that nobody had thought to check on. Kevin was told to leave and did. He didn't post the video for months. The footage sat on his camera while he processed what he'd walked into that afternoon. For someone whose entire channel is built around the idea that a neglected lawn is a sign that someone needs help, stumbling onto a situation where the help came too late hit differently than anything else he'd experienced. He took time away from posting. He had to. When the video finally went live in April 2022, the title was blunt. He'd stumbled onto a crime scene during a free mow, and the police had forced him to leave. Nothing was sensationalized. Kevin told it the way it happened. The comments section filled up almost immediately. Over 20,000 responses, with viewers from all over sharing their own stories of loss, isolation, and the quiet ways people slip through the cracks. It wasn't the kind of viral moment anyone plans for. It was the kind that happens when something true reaches people at the right time. The channel that had spent years building slowly was suddenly everywhere. New subscribers arrived by the hundreds of thousands. Media outlets picked up the story. And a guy who had been grinding in relative obscurity for the better part of 4 years found himself with an audience that matched the size of his mission. He wasn't ready for what came next. Going viral sounds like the goal until it actually happens. The version of Lawn Care Juggernaut that existed before April 2022 was a channel with a loyal but modest following. People who had found Kevin organically, who understood what the channel was, and who showed up consistently because they connected with the mission. That audience had been built slowly, carefully, one free job at a time. After the video dropped, all of that changed almost overnight. The subscriber count didn't just climb, it surged. From roughly 300,000 before the video to over 700,000 by the end of 2022, the channel more than doubled in the span of months. News outlets picked up the story. Social media pushed the clip across platforms it had never reached before. People who had never heard of Lawn Care Juggernaut suddenly had an opinion about it. That kind of exposure is a double-edged thing. It brings in viewers who are there for the spectacle, not the substance. People who showed up for one dramatic video and had no context for the 4 years of unglamorous, consistent work that preceded it. Kevin has spoken about the weight that comes with that level of attention. The channel had always been personal. The homeowners he helped were real people going through real things, and the entire operation ran on a foundation of trust. Trust that he wasn't exploiting their situations. Trust that the mission was genuine. Trust that the cameras served the story rather than the other way around. A massive influx of new eyes doesn't always strengthen that foundation. Sometimes it complicates it. There was also the simple human cost of what he'd experienced at that property in October 2021. The viral wave arrived on top of something he was still carrying. Hundreds of thousands of new subscribers don't process the grief out of a situation like that. They just add noise to it. What's remarkable is that Kevin didn't pivot. He didn't chase the momentum with a different kind of content or try to engineer another moment like that one. He went back to what he'd always done, found a yard that needed help, showed up, and got to work. The audience that stayed was the one worth keeping. And he's still out there proving it. As of right now, Kevin Hansen is still out there, still mowing for free, still refusing sponsorships, still showing up at properties in states far from home because someone submitted a form on his website and he decided they were next. The channel sits just under 800,000 subscribers, close enough to that million milestone that his fans bring it up constantly. And somewhere out there is a barber waiting for Kevin to finally make good on the beard bet he made years ago, promising to shave the ZZ Top facial hair for charity the moment he hits that number. But the beard isn't really the point. The point is that Kevin Hansen started with a chainsaw and $100, built something that nobody thought was a viable business model, accidentally went viral because of one of the hardest moments of his life, and came out the other side still doing exactly what he was doing before anyone was watching. That consistency is rarer than it sounds. Most channels that blow up change, the content shifts, the mission drifts, and the original audience quietly moves on. That hasn't happened here. And maybe that's the most surprising part of the whole story. Not the crime scene video, not the free work, not the two channels approaching a combined million subscribers. It's the fact that after everything, the guy with the mower is still just the guy with the mower. Some people really are exactly who they appear to be.